I know you gonna dig this.
Get funky with me.
What's going on, everybody? How are you doing today? Here I am in the Lincoln Park section of Chicago, and I'm walking to North Clark Street. And on this street, something called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre occurred. And I think we've all heard of it. We know bits of it. I'm going to try to tell you what I know, and I'm going to show you where it happened. We're walking through it right now. It's February 14th, 1929. Capone versus Bugs Moran. Capone ran an outfit on the south side, Moran, Irish on the north. But they're running liquor out of a place right here. And 4 unknown assailants. It's still an unsolved crime, technically. 2 were dressed as policemen, lined up, I believe it was 7 men up against a wall. And with the Tommy guns, murdered all 7 of them. It's just right around this corner right here. I'll show you what I can show you. I know we'll see. I'll show you. Now, I've been reading a lot about this case, and like I said, it's unsolved. And Al Capone's gang is not necessarily the culprit. It's not definite. Nobody really knows to this day. Al Capone himself was down in Florida being questioned for something else. The perpetrators have never been conclusively identified, but former members of the Egan's Rats gang working for Capone are suspected of the role, but so are members of the Chicago Police Department themselves, who allegedly want revenge for the killing of a police officer's son. The most common theory is that Capone henchman Machine Gun Jack McGurn assembled a murder team with lookouts and their job was to watch the garage and alert other triggermen when Bugs Moran appeared at the site. After murdering the 7 men, they discovered that their only error was that one of the victims was not Bugs Moran. Now look across here. To my right is the location of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but I want to show you something else first. That building right there, Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder, that's where Capone's men were waiting upstairs, right in that building. This building. Yes, this is the one. They're waiting right here, inside. Because the SMC Cartage Company, which the Moran gang was using as a front for distributing liquor, is right there. And that's where that garage was. St. Valentine's Day Massacre is right past that Suburban. But up here, this it still stands. Capone's men used that as a lookout. Now let's go across the street without getting hit by a car, specifically a Honda or a Ford or maybe another Ford. See how I know cars? I don't know what that is. And don't bother writing it in the comments because I won't remember, but I appreciate it nonetheless. St. Valentine's Day Massacre occurred right here. See where that tree is? That's where the famous wall was that they lined them up against. Right there. That's how far back it went, and that tree marks the spot where the famous wall was. Now I'm going to tell you about that wall because it's had a strange history itself. So the somewhat condensed version of what happened here in 1929. One of Capone's longtime enemies, as I previously mentioned, George Bugs Moran, ran his bootlegging operations out of a garage here. On February 14th, 7 members of Moran's operation were gunned down while standing lined up facing the wall of the garage. Some 70 rounds of ammunition were fired. When police officers from Chicago's 36th District arrived, they found one gang member, Frank Gusenberg, barely alive. In the few minutes before he died, they pressed him to reveal what happened, but he wouldn't talk. Police could only find a few eyewitnesses, but eventually concluded that gunmen dressed as police officers had entered the garage and pretended to be arresting the men. Though Moran and others immediately blamed the massacre on Capone's gang, the famous gangster himself claimed to have been at his home in Florida the entire time. No one was ever brought to trial for the murders. It remains one of the biggest unsolved crimes in history. So yes, while the crime itself is very fascinating, I find the history of the wall even more fascinating, because the building was eventually demolished. It was considered a bad luck omen in the neighborhood. But a Canadian businessman, a Canadian you say, by the name of George Patty, snatched up the bricks, hoping to create some sort of money-producing spectacle with them by displaying them in a restaurant or club. But he's having difficulty selling the morbid novelty item to business partners. He eventually started selling them off to crime history enthusiasts, who took about 100 of them off his hands. When he died, the remaining bullet-hole dimpled bricks found a home, someplace they could be truly appreciated: the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement, also known as the Mom Museum in Las Vegas. What they did was they reassembled it and they displayed it, complete with an accompanying film and some quick dabs of reddish paint for maximum dramatic effect. Now right across the street, right there, that's the building I showed you. That's where Capone's men, allegedly Capone's men, I think we can say Capone's men now, were. And I'm assuming the third floor, that'd give you a better lookout. Right here. To the site of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Isn't that wild? It's just, it was demolished a long time ago, but nothing is here still on this little lot of land. And this is prime real estate in this area. I mean, this is Lincoln Park in Chicago. It's pretty nice. Now they do tours in Chicago, like mafia and mob tours, and they do include this on some of them. But I wonder how many people drive by and walk by and not know that this is the site of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. I mean, it shocked the nation. It was major headlines across the USA. It was the biggest crime of its time. Right here. Right past this fence, right back where that tree is. That's the sound of a Tommy gun that I added in there. Though the St. Valentine's Day Massacre marked the end of any significant gang opposition to Capone's rule in Chicago, it could also be said to have marked the beginning of his downfall. With his highly effective organization, his impressive income, and his willingness to ruthlessly eliminate his rivals, Capone had become the country's most notorious gangster, and newspapers dubbed him public enemy number one. Federal authorities began investigating Capone after he failed to appear before a federal grand jury after being subpoenaed in March of 1929. When he finally appeared and testified, he was arrested for contempt of court. He posted bond and was released, only to be arrested in Philadelphia later that May on charges of carrying concealed weapons. He served 9 months in prison and was released for good behavior. In February 1931, a federal court found Capone guilty on the contempt charge and sentenced him to 6 months in Cook County Jail. But meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Department had launched an investigation of Capone for income tax evasion. And they were able to put together a case. In June 1931, Capone was indicted for evasion of federal income tax. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in prison, first in Atlanta and later, of course, at Alcatraz. He was released in 1939 and died an invalid recluse at his Florida home in 1947. Now, as I've stated a few times throughout this video, Capone was never convicted of having anything to do with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So there are other theories, and I'm sure I'll read them in the comments. Who knows? I don't think anybody has a definitive answer. All we know is it happened right there. All right, from the site of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. I always want to see this, and I'm glad I got to bring you along to show you as well. Wow. That's it, right there. Peace out.